Welcome back to Enigmatica 2 Expert Extended Edition. I've recently updated the mod pack to version 89 up from .88, I believe. I highly recommend checking out the changelog on the GitHub for this mod pack. I'll probably leave a link for that in my video description, but lots of good information, really easy to read. I've spent what feels like quite a bit of time off camera just doing small things of no significance, and I always find it difficult when recording what to cut and what to keep. So occasionally I'll probably throw in the odd clip of me doing something and the timeline's going to be all janked up, but it is what it is.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear that the thoughts build up until I can't hear, that my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper.
And something that would have got cut last video, I think, which is probably worth showing, especially early game, is the Forester from Cyclic. It's very cool because it doesn't require RF, and by default it's always on. You can hear it there. I'll just turn it off for a moment. But in the Utilities tab here, we have the Forester. I've worked through a few of them, as you can see, and I need to work through more because there's lots of really interesting mods. I really like this page, how the mod pack author did this. It kind of introduces the player to a lot of neat little nice to have things that you might not notice otherwise. And it's the Forester. Slowly cuts down the plants. Oh, and plants trees. Forgot that part. It doesn't require RF to function. So we click on it. The lava was pretty easy to get. Either, you do the Tinker's Way, but this is kind of cool. My nether portal spread is underground, but if I place wood down there, it will instantly basically turn to lava wood. Maybe not instantly, but pretty quick. Ash is simple to get. I think I get it from killing something. Oh yes, possibly netherfish. The nether portal spreading to stone and all that. If you vein mine all the netherrack, which I had done, it spawns a ton of these. Watch out for that. Magical wood is pretty easy, and it's actually used in quite a few items so far. And yes, if you haven't already, hit up dungeons, hit up villages, constantly be on the lookout because there's a lot of good loot in this pack. Oh yeah, cheaper item collector that I didn't know about. Honestly, two mods in this mod pack that are really helpful to look into, especially early game, would be Cyclic, and anything that looks cool, even if you can't make it right away, but you might have a use for it later. If you hold A and you hover over it, whoops, you can't be typing, you gotta be hovering like that, hit A and then it bookmarks it, or A again to get rid of it. Like the block breaker from Random Things, something I might want to use later. It's pretty darn cheap to make, so I've kind of favorited it. Same with this rain shield. Prevents rain in 5 chunk radius around it, which is awesome because, as we all know, it rains a lot. But yeah, Cyclic's got a lot of nice little utility mods that are fairly cheap, but then again, see that price got increased. And then Random Things, a ton of other really useful mods. And one of them that I want to play with that I saw the other day was this inventory tester, which is really cool. Basically, you slap it on the side of a chest and it tries to put an item stack into the chest. And if there's room, it emits redstone, or you can invert it. But it's basically like a checker. Can you push this type of item into this inventory space? So there's a lot of potential for that. And then last but not least, Pebble, possibly the hardest item to get. You got to dry mud, which means you need the dehydrator, which means you need the iron rod, which means that's not too bad, right? Because you can always use this plate presser, which doesn't cost that much. And then brimstone again, you get it from nether portal spreading. Any type of cobblestone changes into brimstone. Very cool. Slime bucket. Slime bucket, don't have essence yet, is a slime cube. And that's a little intimidating. I actually made a few of them before I realized you can a slime in a slime bucket. Okay, this is crazy. I've been trying to find a slime in a swamp forever now, and I found one. And it works. I believe it only works with small ones. Anyways, back to the forester. We can crank down the range as 19 blocks if we wanted to, but this is a big old tree, so we'll leave it where it is. This isn't perfectly optimized, of course, because the hopper's not going to catch items that drop too far out of range, but it's pretty slick. Taking a quick look at the cost of this, very cheap. I think I've been finding a lot of pearls early game in dungeons. But I don't like stuff as a rule running for no reason, so I try to disable stuff like that. Yeah, and there's another forester there. I actually built 2 of them. You might be wondering, why do I have so many quests that are not collected? And it's because they typically offer an option, a choice reward, and I haven't decided what I want to pick yet. So a really cool mod that's added to this pack is the industrial wires, which I never played with before, but basically you can use the immersive engineering type of wiring to convert between RF and EU. And if we search industrial and then at wires, we get the industrial wires mod here, which looks like it adds, tin, copper, gold, HV, glass. But back to IC2. I just started making a bunch of machines. It's honestly worth, right at the beginning, these basic machines, like crafting 32 of them. Like I just crafted a whole stack or maybe 2 stacks of iron because each one of these costs 8 ingots plus your aluminum plates. I must have made 32 of these, I think. I was going to put them over here. And through the power of editing, we are now over here. So I just kind of made one of each machine. I'm going to double up on some of them, like the macerators and the metal formers, because it lets you, make wires, lets you make plates, and wires again, question mark. Block cutting machine. I made the iron blade because these guys are a lot more expensive than I last remember. Alumite. I guess potentially I could do it. I could totally do it. I just didn't. And that's steel, which seems like an absolute waste. So I'm going to jump right from the basic iron guy, which still is expensive, lots of iron, all the way to diamond because I think this just makes sense. And I had started getting into Xnet. So IC2 is important to get into Xnet, which I will... This is no good. This is too crammed. I was thinking I could use it as an early game base, but I might just stick the odd forestry machine up here because there's far less forestry machines that I need. Quickly looking at the gates chapter, I like how they've kind of rearranged these mini gates. And industrial craft is a mini gate to RF tools. And these things are awesome for various little utility things. There's one from RF Tools called Inventory Checker. I'm a huge fan of that I'll be using lots later in the series. And then, of course, pipes, Xnet. Now, anytime I've heard people talk about Xnet, either they say, yeah, it's kind of cool, or they're like, I don't like it. But a lot of the stuff you can ignore, like the antenna dish and all that, the routers, I don't even bother. The wireless routers, I've always just kept a controller, or sometimes several controllers, but I've split the networks up into different segments. But for the time being, one controller, and then you just go right to these basic connectors. And they are kind of expensive. The carbon plate, as I'm sure you know, is a little annoying to make. You gotta wait for it. That's why I take steel, a whole block of steel, compact it in the plates, compact 9 of them into a large plate, and I make this one. It just seems more efficient because the carbon is absolutely annoying to wait for all the coal to crush down because it costs 8 pieces of coal. And the controller is actually really cheap. I like that they used an IC2 block instead of the regular RF Tools block. because that thing is costly in this pack. And taking a quick peek at it, it is costly. Mainly it's this pink slime. I don't think you can cheese it in like how you could in the OG pack of Enigmatica 2. I think you actually gotta get into Industrial Foregoing to get it. And then of course the cables. Once you're at this point, pretty cheap to make. And the reason you might want these cables, even if you don't like Xnet, is, you know, you can use them for some really basic item transfer or thermal. I'm actually kind of surprised. I forgot that this was a recipe, which is kind of cool. Interesting, you can recover them from gold. That's one thing I wish more mod packs would do, is actually recycling. Like, let's say we get into AE2 in the far, far future, and I mean the far, far future. You might not want Xnet because AE2 is just more robust, or it can be. So you get a little bit of gold back. Then again, formula buckets is probably not worth the time. I'd like to see more incentivization. Is that a word? To recycling technology. There was a mod pack called Cuboid Outpost that had that. That was kind of cool. You had to recycle some machines for some basic resources back, which is a good, like, kind of crash landing type themed game concept. Another item that is very handy to rush towards early game is this V.I.C.E. Vaultopic Inventory Crafting. I'm going to call it the Pipboy. It lets you pull items from nearby inventories into a portable crafting table with JEI integration. So what that looks like is, if I hit numpad 5 on the keyboard, which is where I have it hotkeyed to, you see it say V.I.C.E. So what I can do here is just click on an item. This probably won't work, but... Okay, so I had coal, double coal somewhere. And notice how that stack wasn't in here. I just kind of shift-clicked because I thought it would be in there. Somebody told me the other day, this button, I never use it, but it merges to nearby chests. Or if you hold shift, it deposits all your stuff. I think up here. It doesn't deposit your toolbar. But I'm not going to hold shift. I'm just going to click on it. Okay, I must have only had 2 compressed charcoals, because if I put one in here, and then, whoops. Okay, so 1 is in there, and if I push merge, that one disappeared because there was a stack there, or there was a partial stack there. That's a really handy way when you hit numpad 5 and you're in the little Pip-Boy thing and you're trying to make stuff, like let's say these blue connectors. Let's shift click over this guy. Look at that. I'm actually going to make one of those because you can never have too much. The only annoying thing is you can't shift click. Like if I was to go back here again and hold shift, it only does 1 stack, and it actually kind of breaks apparently. Back to the inventory, push the merge button to maybe get rid of everything. Let's try it again by shift clicking. And as you can see, it only puts the 1 recipe in. And that is a bad test, I guess, because I am missing an ingredient, but I guess snow's a good example. Holding shift, it only does 1. It's not the end of the world. You just rapidly click like that. But the first component, very cheap to make. You just have to make 4 of these total. So this times 2, which then makes you 1 of these. And what this thing does is it actually only does a search. It doesn't bring up a crafting grid. So it can only search 10 blocks, which I'm sure for my little crafting room that's way too small, that'd be sufficient, right? It's down in the middle, and then anything 10 blocks away it can pull from. And through testing, it can pull from... I gotta correct myself here. For crafting, this device can pull from these crates and from these storage drawers and these cabinets, right? This guy can do that. However, these guys don't have crafting grids. They just search. And searching only works from certain inventory storages, if that makes sense. So this has a searching range of 10, searching range of 20. This can craft and can search. So what I mean by that is if I hit Control numpad 5, where I have this hotkey, I can do a search for, let's say, sandwiches, a partial match. You scroll, okay, well, I got sandwiches in this drawer. And what's really neat is you can actually click, say, give me one of those, give me one of those. But what you'll notice is books. Let's do Control 5 and let's search for book. Well, we got bookshelves and we got some enchanted books, but it can't search the crates, which is really too bad. And it can't search drawers. So that was the search for tin. Can't do spaces, okay. And the reason it's actually duplicating it is because these cabinets are actually too tall, and so it's counting what's in here twice. This guy, you just dump him in a little bit of mineral resin, which is easy to do.
Welcome to my party, we're just getting started. A life is a dream or a nightmare scarring. Hand me a drink cause I think I'm going all in. Get me a shrink who can catch me when I'm falling. Cover up my scars, flip the handlebars. Crashing in my car, wake up in a bar. I'll be a superstar, just on my avatar.
And then for this dude, you have to drop the crushing block on it, which is a really cool block, I would say. Early game, it's a quick way to triple your blaze powder output, and then some basic resources like getting skystone dust is really nice to get from this crushing block, which isn't too bad. Double compressed charcoal, that's the main reason I built that forester actually. That with the tinker's furnace is a really easy way to get a lot of charcoal. And the heavy block is not too bad. You just have to make this heavy mixed lump. Crush up some quartz and some lead. I was a little confused in the beginning how to get bitumen, but you can get that from gravel sand. No, not gravel sand. Oil. What's it called? Oil gravel? Nope. Shale? Yeah, so in the swamp and underground, there's a ton of oil shale. When you break it, you're basically guaranteed to get that bitumen drop. So that's the crushing block. And what's really cool about it is, let's say you're trying to make something skystone dust. You stand here and you right click for a little while and you look how are we doing? And it hasn't finished yet. Nice. We hold it a bit more. Nice. So that's cool, right? And that's how I got the crushed quartz and the crushed lead for the heavy lump mix. But that's kind of slow. What's cool about this crushing block is, coupled with the iron rod that's meant to break things, coupled with a piston, boom, right? All you do is you throw down what you got to crush, and then you step on your elevator block, and boom, the whole stack at once. That's pretty slick.
Who's that Pokemon?
Got plans for him. And I've died 3 times. What else here? Viewing station, pretty cheap to make. You need it for the time in the bottle, which I highly, highly recommend. It is so handy, especially when you're just AFKing and, standing around talking. You need it for this experience in view. Pretty cheap to make, right? We got 41 hours and a few minutes on our time in the bottle. And while aluminum cooks pretty quickly, that is a lot more fun. I'll mention this in case you're like me and you don't read stuff all the time, the tool tips, but click a bookshelf with this to convert it to mending moss, which is what this guy is. So a lot of recipes for various things that we're going to find useful later are going to require mending moss. When you first click on it, right, to see, okay, how do I make this? Okay, it's a loot. You can maybe trade it. You can do this, which is way out of our league, and then I haven't researched if this is easy to get this stuff, but I imagine I need infrastructure first. So you're like, man, how do I make this? Well, you hover over this guy, it just tells you make it, and then click a bookshelf, and you'll get 10 levels, or you'll lose 10 levels, but you'll get the mending moss. So we do one of those, boom, and we just do that. Very cool. Just easy to miss, in my opinion. Ah, yes, the Floo network, the teleportation network. Random things have been in a lot of mod packs that I've played, and I've never bothered to play with this stuff, but that changes today. It is actually very cool. Huge fan. So the base ingredient, Floo powder, which is actually used to make a lot of things that aren't just to do with teleportation. As you can see, returning block of sticks is super awesome. With this Floo powder, you can clearly see it makes much more sense to do this recipe, the Ender Dust. Unfortunately for me, I found a Endermite spawner, and they dropped this stuff. And the Endermite spawner happens to be right there. Yeah, there's this cool structure that actually spawns a bunch of end-related stuff. You can get ender pearls in here too. But basically, we'll look in some endstone. Oh, no, that's vertical portal. But yeah, there's a zombie spawner up here, endermite over here, ender silverfish down here, and then at the very, very bottom of it, there was wither skeleton spawning at bedrock. The flute token's kind of cool. I found some of these in a chest, but when you throw them on the ground, they'll create a temporary fireplace where you can teleport to stuff. I don't know how it works. Okay. So then I just type in astral, I think. Cool. So I actually have one of these fireplaces set up almost across the map. Here's the base, the swamp base, and here's the temple. And I just decided, hey, this is a good place to do astral because we're up high at Y level 104. And if I was to stand here and type in swamp, and nothing happens. You actually got to be holding, I think, an item from the mod at least, or maybe something Floo related. If I was to type in swamp now, you're already at your destination. So that's not true, because see how it says teleporting to Astral Temple? It's doing like an approximation word search, and for whatever reason, it thinks swamp is close to Astral. I don't get it, but I called it Swamp Basement. Not a great name. I'll be moving this portal later. It's just kind of temporarily here. That's why it's got such a crummy name to type. I think I should just call it Astral Temple. Something fairly easy to remember what you called it. There we go, cool. Now it's a Floo brick. Of course, this is not required. I thought it looked kind of cool. It's an actual fireplace. Books. Books are important. The Akashic's Tome. Awesome, awesome thing. It lets you combine all books from various mods, as you can see here, into one book to carry around. And what's really cool in this mod pack, and I think a few others, I wish all of them would do that, they combine them all for you with a little recipe here, which is quite cheap to make. So we right click, and here's all our books. And what's really cool is a book like Astral, you can actually shift right click and open the book up to all these little papers you got to collect to do the constellations. But that information doesn't get lost, right? However, I learned this from my last series that I played. If you throw a Lexica Botania book through an Elven Gateway portal, I'm pretty sure it destroys this whole book. Maybe just the whole item in general, because you're not actually throwing that book through. You're technically throwing the Akashic's Tomb book through. And I think if you throw junk through it, you just lose it. The dwarves keep it. So that book almost should not be included in here, or if it is included in here, they should really include the enhanced version that you get back from the elves after you throw it through their portal. This book, though, the big writing book, Goals. Do I have a strategy? Very cool little book. They recommend you save it because if you just escape out of it, sometimes it might not save. I haven't experienced that, but I try to save it. Never click sign. If you click sign, this thing gets sealed up and you can't make changes. Some stuff we already talked about here. I had a bit of a goal list. Got the forester, get coal or charcoal, crushing block for the little crafting thing, the Pipboy, hydrator, iron bar, slime bucket, slime cube, scanner. I needed emeralds to get the market to buy the beans to get the flue dust. I'm in a bottle. But the AS temple for starlight to make a sand generator. Slime test theory, slime in a bucket. So I actually proved that you can catch a small slime. I haven't done armor or backup weapons in case I die yet. I need to. Slave controller, transfer note, Xnet cable. Haven't done that yet. I do have, no, scratch that. I have a controller, but not a slave controller. And then ectoplasm, sapling, mystical egg, IC2 weeds. I find it's kind of a helpful flowchart, right? I mean, you can hotkey stuff here, but you start to kind of get mixed up. And something I'm sure somebody's noticed by now, but JEI, I think there's a history add-on. So it kind of keeps a record of what you last looked at, which is so cool. Like, unbelievably useful to have this with this. They're not competing mods. They both do their own thing and they do it really well.